Hey there. So you're thinking about maybe a career as a production engineering technician. Pretty cool. Always thought it was kind of a fascinating field, Like you get your hands dirty, but you're also using your brain to solve problems.
Right.
Lucky for us, we've got some really great info from RoleCatcher to unpack all that.
Yeah, they've got this whole guide, really in-depth stuff about the career itself, not just like the bare bones, and also some interesting stuff about how their platform helps you snag one of these jobs, which is cool.
Totally. So we're not just talking about what a production engineering technician does today, but where it's all headed, right?
Yeah.
Which is huge if you're like actually thinking about this long term. Okay, so let's get into it. RoleCatcher mentions planning, like production processes, fixing stuff that goes wrong, basically making sure everything runs smoothly. But I don't know, technician always seems kind of vague to me. What do you think?
Totally. It's almost misleading. There's this whole detective aspect to it, you know? People don't really talk about that. Like, imagine, machine on the line starts acting up, production slowing down, right? A good technician, they're not just randomly trying stuff. They're digging into the data logs, analyzing all those performance metrics, running tests. It's about figuring out the why.
That is so cool. Instead of dusting for fingerprints, they're like analyzing microchip performance.
Exactly. It's not just can you work this machine, it's do you understand the entire system? Got to connect the dots, see how one tiny thing can cascade into a huge mess if you don't catch it.
Which makes sense when you think about where they work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, RoleCatcher mentions the typical factory floor, but also offices, even labs.
Okay, so
So it's not just one kind of environment.
definitely not. I mean, some techs are going to be on that floor all day, elbows up in machinery, but others, they're more into the design side, analysis, optimization, maybe even some light R&D, depending on the company.
Oh, and this little detail stood out to me. RoleCatcher mentions travel. And I don't think they mean just like your average business trip, right? Are we talking like flying out to fix a major problem at another facility?
Could be. Especially with bigger companies, multiple production sites, maybe even international stuff. And then there's the whole keeping up with tech angle. Visits to vendors, seeing the newest gadgets. That
Wow.
could be pretty cool.
And speaking of tech, we got to talk about how it's changing the game because RoleCatcher does not shy away from this. Automation, AI, it's the future, right?
Big time. It's not your grandpa's assembly line anymore. Knowing how to use a wrench is great and all, but understanding robotics, AI, all that sophisticated software, that's where it's at.
Okay, so paint me a picture here. You walk onto the factory floor, but instead of just machines, it's like a team of robots and humans working alongside them. How real is that? Am I watching too much sci-fi?
Well, it's not sci-fi anymore, that's for sure. We're already seeing a huge push towards that kind of automation. And the interesting thing is, this actually makes technicians even more important. They're the bridge between the humans and all this crazy technology.
So it's less about like competing with robots and more about, I don't know, becoming best buddies with them.
Exactly, and that's why RoleCatcher really hammers home that lifelong learning thing. This tech isn't slowing down. You got to keep up or you'll get left behind.
So if you're listening to this thinking, yeah, this sounds like me, it means being cool with change, always up for learning new stuff, maybe even a little bit excited by the unknown, right?
Totally. It's about seeing those advancements not as something to be scared of, but as a chance to do things even better than before.
I love that. Okay, so we've got the whole detective work thing, the variety of places you could work, how tech is going to keep shaking things up. But let's get real about the good and the bad, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Because every job has those. Rollcatcher starts off pretty optimistic, high demand, good salary, hands-on, lots of room to move up the ladder.
Yeah.
Sounds tempting, right?
Right. But
Let's dig a little deeper, yeah.
totally. So high demand is a good thing, but it's not the whole story. Like, what kind of production engineering are we talking about? Some industries, some specializations within that, they're going to be booming more than others, right? And good salary is relative. Experience, where you live, what the company is like, those all matter.
Right, right.
It's good that they bring this up, though, because you can't just assume, gotta do your research, be smart about your career choices.
Absolutely. And okay, got to address the elephant in the room, the not so fun stuff. Rollcatcher mentions it can be physically demanding, and not everyone's cut out for that, right? I mean, we could be talking long hours on your feet, maybe lifting heavy stuff, working in places that are like noisy or hot.
Yeah, gotta be real about that. It's not gonna be for everyone. But I actually think it's better to think of those things as filters, almost. Like, if that stuff doesn't scare you off, if you actually kind of thrive in that environment, then it's probably a good sign this is for you.
Exactly. Who wants a job that's boring and predictable? Where's the fun in that? So you're not afraid of a little hard work. You're ready to dive into the world of production engineering. What makes you stand out from the crowd? RoleCatcher seems to think continuous learning and networking are key, and I mean, that makes sense, especially in a field that's changing so fast.
They're right on the money with that one. Think about it. A doctor who doesn't keep up with the latest medical breakthroughs, that's not good, right? It's the same here. Going to those industry conferences, joining the professional groups. It's not just about looking good on paper. It's about expanding your horizons and staying ahead of the curve.
Yeah, like you're not just learning new skills, you're actually becoming part of a community of people who are like obsessed with solving problems and coming up with cool new stuff.
Exactly. And that's where I think RoleCatcher's platform comes in handy. Their career guides, job boards, even their interview prep stuff.
Mm.
It all feeds into that whole idea of always learning and growing.
Like having a personal career coach in your pocket. Okay, one more thing I got to bring up because this really surprised me. RoleCatcher lists a bunch of skills you need for this gig reading, good judgment, all that good stuff. But then there's one that made me do a double take. Persuasion. Why on earth would a technician need persuasion skills?
Ah, see, that's where people get it wrong. You're not just tinkering with machines in a bubble. You're part of a team. And you got to be able to explain your ideas, get people on board with your solutions, especially when you're dealing with colleagues who maybe don't get all the techie stuff.
So it's not just fixing the problem, it's convincing other people that your way is the best way. That adds a whole other layer to it.
For sure. It's about building those relationships, understanding where people are coming from, and explaining your ideas in a way that everyone gets.
So you could be like the most brilliant engineer ever, but if you can't talk to people, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And that's a skill that goes way beyond just this job, right? That's useful anywhere, but especially in a field where teamwork is everything.
It's like you could have all the tech schools in the world, but if you can't sell your ideas, get everyone on the same page. It's not going to happen.
100%. You got to be a problem solver, A&D, a people person, right? And speaking of which, might surprise you to learn you don't need a PhD for this gig.
Although, I'm sure it wouldn't hurt. But seriously, what are we talking about here, education-wise?
So RoleCatcher says, yeah, a bachelor's degree in engineering, tech, something like that. It's definitely a plus. But a lot of employers are open to folks with an associate's degree, or even just really good certifications.
So it's not like this super exclusive club, which is cool. Gives people options, whether you're just starting out or maybe looking for a change. So say you land one of these production engineering technician jobs. Where does it go from there? What's the path look like?
Oh, tons of possibilities. RoleCatcher mentions, like moving into management, could get really specialized in one particular area of production that's always in demand. Some people even branch out, start their own consulting thing.
So definitely room to grow, make it your own,
Right.
which, again, makes sense, right? This whole field is like a moving target. And speaking of moving targets, got to circle back to tech changing everything. RoleCatcher gives this whole rundown of specific technologies that are already shaking things up. Some of this stuff sounds like it's straight out of Star Wars.
I know, right? We're talking computer-aided design, CAD software, all those engineering systems, CAE. Then you've got your robotics, 3D printing. I mean, come on. And the cool thing is, this isn't just like theoretical. This is how it's actually done now.
Yeah.
It's like you show up with this superpower toolkit to make everything faster, better, stronger. But I can see how someone hearing all this might be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Do I need to be like coding before breakfast to even apply for this job? What would you say to someone who's maybe a little intimidated by all the tech?
I'd say chill out. First of all, nobody's expecting you to be an expert on day one.
Yeah.
It's a learning process, right? And that's where places like RoleCatcher are really helpful because they don't just throw the terms at you and say, good luck. They've got skill guides, tutorials, even like simulations so you can practice. It's not about being intimidated. It's about being into it, wanting to learn, experiment, all that.
Exactly, because in the end, that's what sets you apart, you know? Everybody's got skills. But who's really hungry to master the new stuff? That's what employers are looking for.
And speaking of employers, let's talk about actually landing one of these gigs. Because you could be the most skilled, tech-savvy person out there, but if you don't know how to work the system. And RoleCatcher actually has some really interesting tips about this.
Totally. They're all about using their platform to your advantage, which, fair enough, it's their thing. But let's break it down, like how does it actually help?
All right, so first up, the job board. And I got to say, this ain't your grandma's job board, right? We're not talking about a million listings that kind of sort of match what you're looking for. This is the good stuff curated specifically for, you guessed it, production engineering technicians.
And the really cool part is you can filter it down. So, like, just show me jobs in this city with this level of experience. Even like, I only want to see jobs that use this specific software. Saves you so much time.
No more endless scrolling. Love it. Okay, so you found some promising leads. Now what?
Well, now RoleCatcher's got this whole CV and resume builder thing,
Yeah.
and it's not just a template, right? It uses, like AI or something, to help you tailor your resume to each specific job description. So you're highlighting exactly what the employer cares about most.
It's like having a professional resume writer on call 24/7. Okay, but here's what I'm really curious about the interview prep tool. Tell me this thing is as cool as it sounds.
It's pretty wild. They have like thousands of practice interview questions. And these aren't just generic, tell me about a time you failed. These are tailored specific to production engineering technician
So
roles.
you can practice, get all the jitters out, and show up to that interview feeling like a rock star.
Exactly.
But we got to be real. It's not all sunshine and roses, right? We talked about the physical demands, the potential for stress, and RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from that, which I appreciate.
Yeah, they're upfront about it. It can be demanding physically, long hours, sometimes got to lift heavy stuff, maybe working in environments that aren't exactly comfy.
Not the best gig if you're like allergic to hard work.
Right. And then the stress factor. Tight deadlines, things breaking down unexpectedly. You got to be able to handle a little pressure.
But as we were saying before, that can be a good thing for the right person. That's what makes it exciting.
Totally. It's about knowing yourself, right? Some people, they thrive under pressure, love to troubleshoot, get a rush out of fixing something that seems impossible.
And there's nothing quite like that feeling when you actually do fix it. Knowing your skills made a difference. Okay, so we've talked about the now, what it takes to get started, what the job is actually like. But let's zoom out for a sec. Big picture time. Where is all this headed? What does the future hold for a production engineering technician?
Good luck predicting that. It's like everyone's got their own sci-fi version of the future.
Totally. But even though we can't, like, see into the future, we can look at what's happening now, right? The trends, the tech that's gaining traction. And RoleCatcher does drop some hints, which is cool.
Ooh, okay, hit me with your best prediction. What's going to be huge EE?
Well, they talk about automation a lot, right? And I think that's only going to get bigger. But it's not just that robots are going to steal everyone's jobs. It's more like robots and humans working closer and closer together.
So instead of just using robots, it's more like we're going to be like coworkers with them.
Exactly. And that changes everything, right? It's not enough to just know the technical stuff. You got to be adaptable, a quick thinker, able to solve problems on the fly. Because trust me, with new tech, there are always going to be glitches.
Makes sense. Anyone can learn to push a button. But when that super advanced robot arm goes haywire, that's where the humans come in.
Yep. And that's why that whole lifelong learning thing is so important. This isn't a learn it once and you're good kind of field. It's got to be part of your DNA, being curious, wanting to learn new stuff all the time.
I feel like that's good advice for like everyone though, right? Not just this job. Things are changing so fast, you got to be able to keep up.
100%. And what's cool about this field is it's like the intersection of so many things.
Yeah.
Engineering, obviously, but also tech, manufacturing, even design. So many paths you could go down.
That's what I love about these deep dives. We started with RoleCatcher's take, right? Their snapshot of what this job is now.
Yeah.
But we've gone way beyond that.
Totally. We talked about how it's all changing, how tech and human skills are going to be even more intertwined. Plus that whole soft skills thing, communication, persuasion. You don't always see that on a job listing, but it matters.
And on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground. This wasn't just about, like, here's how to become a production engineering technician. It was about getting you thinking.
Exactly, sparking that curiosity.
So if you're listening to this and thinking, all right, this is kind of calling to me, maybe it is the right path for you. And hey, who knows? Maybe down the line we'll do another deep dive and see where it's all gone. Because who knows what the future holds, right? But one thing's for sure, it's going to be wild.
I'm down for that.
All right, until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and as always, keep those gears turning.